Good afternoon, everyone. I want to welcome our audience into episode 3 of Live from the SOC. Again, my name is Chad Spears. I'm the director of InfusionPoints SOC Operations team here at InfusionPoints. And I'm joined today by Jeremy Powers. Jeremy?
Hey.
Joshua Winters as well.
Hello.
Anthony Guines.
Hey, guys.
And as always, live from the SOC with us, we have Alex Erdhart. Alex, how you doing?
Good. How are you?
Doing good. How's the SOC going today?
It's going.
Good deal. I'd like to hear it. So interesting time, guys. We're recording this here the first week, the first week here in March. And I know that all of you guys have been keeping up, as well as myself, with the things that are going on in the news, the things that are going on around the world. And you, as well as I know, that earlier this week, late last week, there were several cyber campaigns that had kicked off, and unfortunately, we see several organizations that have paid the price for that. So again, due to the geopolitics that are kind of going on and before us, I spoke about that earlier in the week on a video that I put out there, but it is a reality, and a lot of these companies are now unfortunately facing that reality. And today we're actually going to be talking about that reality a little bit. It's kind of both sides of the aisle, if you will. We've seen organizations here within the U.S. I believe NVIDIA might be in a name. There's another large name that's out there as well that's been recently hit. And it is an unfortunate incident, and in time that these things are happening. But I do believe, quite honestly, that we're going to see more of this. So, in today's talk, I wanted to kind of poll you guys and bring our audience in on a little bit about what does incident response entail. What is it that we do here at InfusionPoints with incident responses? How do we come in and take action, and what are we looking for? But also, we're in a pretty unique position here at InfusionPoints because we have individuals from both sides of the aisles, if you will. So we have individuals, Jeremy, yourself, you, Alex, I know the whole team, we've all helped with customers that are going through the worst days of their lives, right? They've contacted us, and it's an unfortunate situation, and now we're having to help them kind of pick up the pieces, if you will. So we've all been involved in that. But on the other side of the coin, we also have some individuals that are part of the team who have been with an organization that has unfortunately went through a large-scale cyber attack. And so part of that team, myself being included, Mr. Guines and Joshua Winters as well. So we'll talk about that paradigm. So we're going to kind of ping-pong back and forth a little bit here for the audience and talk about that. So, getting things started off, Jeremy, I'd like to ask, when an incident response, when we receive that call into the SOC here at InfusionPoints, what is the state of the customer on the other end of the phone? Let's talk a little bit about the kind of the mental state, if you will. So when you receive that call, how that conversation go, Jeremy?
It's often the customers are panicking. I mean, it's very frustrating, I'm sure, to come into the office and have a ransom note on all your screens, demand money before you can continue work. So panic, stress, just high levels of that.
Gotcha. Yeah, Alex, I know you've fielded some of those calls in the past as well. How do those calls go, and even kind of what does it put you in an awkward position, even having to have that conversation? How does that go generally when you receive those calls, Alex?
Well, I mean, they're just devastated. I mean, their job is to protect the company and the network. And we over here telling them not to panic when that's the only thing they can do.
Yeah, you're exactly right. You brought up a good point. Their job, because a lot of times we're talking to the IT folks, right? It's their job to keep the business going. It's their job to keep the systems up and the systems running. And again, I can tell you from being in that position that, it's kind of like the worst day of your IT career to have to make that phone call and quickly realize that this is not a situation that you can really just quickly pivot away from and brush under the rug, if you will, or move forward. I think we've all been in those situations. Josh, Anthony, Alex, you guys, you probably all been there where, hey, something went awry, something happened, maybe a file got deleted or something like that on a machine. Oops, let me go restore that and move on throughout the day, right? No harm, no foul. You can recover from that. While it may have been a slip up or something like that, not something you wanted to happen, but there was a remediation effort, and you could quickly do that. One of the things with these large-scale incidents, and especially, I mean, we're kind of talking ransomware today, that being the flavor of the week, if you will. I think that's one of the largest attack vectors and cyber attacks out there right now. Now we are seeing kind of some nation-state things as well with data exfiltration and DDoS attacks and things of that nature. So and I believe that there'll be some more supply chain attacks coming down the pipe as well. But talking specifically to ransomware, when they come in, their environments are fully encrypted. You're right. It is one of those moments. Anthony, Josh, talk to me, if you will, a little bit about when you received that phone call, because I remember that afternoon pretty vividly. I can't remember which one of you guys that I actually spoke with during that, but when you received the call, kind of what was the first things that went through y'all's mind?
As I recall, I think I was on call that week, and like you said, you always get these nurse or users trying to click on the wrong thing and download some kind of malware. So we're used to dealing with that kind of thing, but there's we talked about the customer panic and everything. I will say there's nothing quite like getting calls from all across the organization saying, "Hey, my computer's acting funny. It's saying this," and then just sheer panic trying to say, "Okay." And by then, I mean, damage is already done, to be honest. They got what they wanted.
I think me and Anthony were probably the two first that contacted each other, and like he was saying, it was calls coming in from all over the organization. It wasn't just part of it, and at first you're almost overwhelmed because you're like, I don't even know what the root cause of this is yet, but yet it, and they just keep coming and they keep coming and they keep coming to the point where you're like, you don't even want to answer the phone anymore because you know what they're getting ready to say. You would rather put your time and effort into, okay, how do I stop the bleeding at this point?
Yeah, that's a very good point. And we'll talk probably a little bit about that here in just a little bit when we get a little bit deeper into things. But you speak of communications, right? You don't even want to take that call because there's no benefit to you taking the call. You know what it's going to be. You can't make forward progress. And I think I kept repeating that to myself and the team whenever we received those calls and we were kind of working forward. Hey, we got to make forward progress. We got to stop the spread of this. We've got to start remediating. We got to get business going again. That was my thing. Business going again. We got to get business going. And quite honestly, that's not the case. Definitely seen, now hindsight being 2020. So, Jeremy, pivoting back to you, what is the very first thing that you tell customers when they call in and they're all distraught? How does that conversation go? What's the very first thing you tell customers not to do moving through the incident?
First thing is don't overreact. Don't go around and start shutting everything down. And they're in that panic state. The first thing you want to try to calm them down and make sure you tell them, you need to think with a level head.
Right.
I will say that's what you're thinking when you do it. Just shut it down.
Yeah. I'm pretty positive when I came in, the first thing I started doing was grabbing fiber cables and just jerking. I didn't even know where I was. Listen, I was just killing access, But Jeremy, you're exactly right. Keeping a level head. But let's step back for just a second. You said don't shut anything down, and why is that important? Especially to our job.
Well, we're all about collecting evidence and artifacts that's left behind, and if you go around and start shutting machines down in ransomware, we've noticed a lot of the times organizations go back and cover their tracks. So they'll delete logs, the Windows logs and stuff like that. But we have tools that we use here at InfusionPoints that can go in and pull stuff out of like prefetch, out of memory, out of the registry. And if you start shutting machines down, you lose all that.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So
and also there's this chance that the threat actor could still be in the environment. If you go around and start shutting everything down, they're going to know you know what's going on.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that was one of the things that I definitely, as a lessons learned right now, looking back and going through so many of these incidents now on the other side of the aisle here at InfusionPoints, step through it very, very cautiously when you come in. If the threat actor, I think there's this preconceived notion by customers out there that for whatever reason, and I'm just going to put this out there, they almost think that this is like fairy dust, if you will. Like this thing just happened. All of a sudden, we came into our network and there was this virus, and there's this lack of knowledge that, oh, this virus must have been this file, and you double click this file and it just spread and it did its thing. It's almost like you're talking to an end user and asking for a definition of, how did this happen or what's a virus. It's really not that at all. And so I think it would be good now if we kind of let's pivot off and look at one of the things that we leverage here at InfusionPoints. It is some documentation that we kind of use to help organizations and help customers understand the kill chain and the process that we're kind of walking through and even discussing now as to how these things happen. Because just as you mentioned, Jeremy, the threat actor could still be in the environment. We have to determine how they gained access into the environment and how they may continue to have access or that persistence within the environment. So let me throw up a file here for our viewers, and let's kind of talk about this. All right, so we're sharing now a kill chain, and this is just kind of a blanket kill chain, if you will, of ransomware attacks. It does not necessarily have to follow each of these steps. It does not have to even begin with this first step, although a lot of times we do see this. But this is just kind of an outline for our viewers to kind of go through that a little bit. In looking at this, Alex, I'd like to get your thoughts on this because we're going to kind of walk through this. If we start right here with this email campaign with malicious attachment, right? Again, stating that does not have to be the case. But even here recently, Alex, I know that we're working through some incident responses with some customers. What are some of, I would say probably starting around 2020, 2019 into 2019, what are some of the top initial access vectors that you guys are seeing when you're starting to review logs and see how they actually gained that initial access into the environment? What are you guys seeing?
Phishing is a big one. So they'll get a phishing email, and they'll get creds, and then they'll jump to VPN.
Okay, so it's very interesting that you mentioned that as well, right? So we've got the same thing up here, email campaign with malicious attachment, right? It could be a phishing email that just pivots them out to a link where they then provide credentials. But you mentioned VPN. Mm-hmm. With the onset of COVID and everybody kind of going remote, and quite honestly, now we're seeing organizations that have implemented that policy as part of their routine. Hey, we're going to just be remote. We see VPN out there, and we're seeing that leverage more and more. And it does not have to be, Jeremy, you guys jump in here. It does not have to be an email campaign that gathers credentials. We're seeing VPN being even password sprayed, brute forced, or whatnot, right? So again, going back to those weak credentials. But once the threat actor has that VPN access, they become part of the network. And that is one of the things that we have found that makes things really, really hard as well, especially if they get to a point where the VPN account is a domain admin account as well. And we've unfortunately seen that case as well, because now at that point I've got remote access and I have some of the highest privileges within the network that I could want, right? So I can run everything from my machine, keep all the logs, all the artifacts off of your systems. But a lot of times we do see those logs and those artifacts, as Jeremy was talking about, on those machines. So Jeremy, let's take a step back and let's talk about kind of the next thing that you would recommend to the customer as they call in. All right, we've got a level head now. We're thinking about this appropriately. We understand that this didn't just occur. What's kind of the next step, if you will?
The next thing I would go to the firewall. See if I can determine the IP address. If that, just so you could segregate it and block that. But if you can't do that, then I would isolate the network, blocking external from getting in or internal from going out. And that way, you're stopping the communication.
Right. So we're looking for those C2s. And a lot of times here at InfusionPoints, when we come in, if we're deploying our tooling, that's exactly what we're looking for. We're looking for those C2 channels. So command and control. How is it that they're gaining access? How is it that they have connectivity to the network? And that's what you were mentioning as well when you stated don't panic, that the threat actor could still be in there, right? We're wanting to act as everything's normal. It's normal to the threat actor. Let's figure out where he's coming from so that we can kill that. So reviewing those firewall logs, if you can't find it, go ahead and just kind of blanket the firewall. And that's very important in pivoting back off to our FedRAMP and DFARS customers, and these that are held to really, really high compliance standards. That is why it is so important for network documentation and network diagramming to be correct. A lot of organizations fail to have any network diagramming or any network documentation. And so at that point, Josh, Anthony, as you have a million things running through your mind, you're going through your mind, okay, how could they have got in? Well, number one, you're probably not even thinking even that they're in the network, but that's what should be going through your mind. How could they have got in? That's why it's important to understand all the external, ins and outs of the network and have that documented and diagrammed out so that you could go to those locations and quickly say, pull a plug. So I'd have probably been much better off rather than pulling fibers to LAN network connections to go to the external network and just pop that plug real quick and segment things off in that manner. But let's move on down the kill chain. Does somebody have something there? All right, let's move on down the kill chain here. Let's move to the next pieces here. So typically, we'll see the threat actor gain that initial access, right? They're going to move to some type of C2 call or some type of, they're looking for a level of persistence there, right? Being able to have that continuous access to the environment. So we'll see that C2 set up. But then the next step is credential harvesting, essentially seeing what they can gather from where they're at. And then the ultimate goal being crib escalation here, right? So, Alex, what are some of the things from the logging side that we're looking for in these two right here when it comes to logs? When it comes to crib escalation, what do you guys, why are we mapping that out? Why is that important to us?
So we can track their movement in the environment.
All right, so leveraging the user account, being able to track the movement, we know when we're grepping through logs or parsing through logs, we know what user accounts to look for, but also it helps us understand, which user account was leveraged to complete the act or complete the actual attack or execute the payload, so forth, so on, right? That's one of the things that I think is so key. And I'll be honest with you, I don't know with the incident Josh, me, you, and Anthony went through that we ever really truly determined, at least we may never heard about it, what user account was leveraged. But remembering that this is not all just fairy dust here, that there's a process they're going through. Priv escalation, they had to have some type of administrative access to kick all this off, right? So what account was that? And why is that so important, Jeremy? In talking through this and the next steps that we may bring to the customer, how are we going to leverage that information once we have it? What are we going to talk to the customer about doing?
For the customer, once we've segregated the network, stopped any C2's traffic, we'll use our tools, like I said earlier. We'll start log collection, going through trying to determine the user.
Right.
We will check for lateral movement, any kind of scripts that's ran, just your basic stuff. The tools we use can access memory. We can look in there. Main thing though, after we get all that and start going through that, to stop is to do a blanket, just full password reset of the company. Or if you know the user, you can start with that one. But the main thing is just to change passwords, and that way it'll sever all activity that's going on. Yeah,
I definitely like that. It's kind of like Josh stated there, stop the bleeding, right? I mean, it's just like a wound on the battlefield, right? You apply the tourniquet, we got to stop the bleeding. And if they still have that persistence, they still have that user account. And then Alex, like you were bringing up, if they're leveraging that user account for VPN, then there is the ability that they can still have that connection in. So that's where the blanket password reset comes in. I like that, Jeremy, because a lot of times we'll see customers, they do not want to do a blanket password reset because they understand that, hey, this is going to disrupt workflow. Let's just be honest, your workflow is already interrupted. And I hate to put it that way and put it that blunt, but that is the truth about the matter. So, you're exactly right. That blanket password reset would be one of the next things. And Jeremy, you already mentioned, we'll move on down through the kill chain here, lateral movement. and how they move throughout the environment. But this is really where it gets into, Alex, you guys in the SOC, right? Incidents kicked off. We've deployed our tooling. We're starting to pull down these logs. What are some of the first things that you guys go to when it comes to a Windows machine, if you will? Most environments we're seeing, Windows domain environments. What are some of the logs that you guys are going to look for lateral movements? And then obviously the next steps, reconnaissance, inventory, things of that nature. What's some of the things that you guys are seeing? What are you looking for?
So the first place I go as soon as we get logs is I'll go to, I believe it's RDP terminal services.
Okay, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, so what are you looking for in those RDP terminal services?
Just looking for remote desktop connections between anything, and then trying to trace it, keep going down the line and figure out where they ended up.
Okay, gotcha. So you're really just creating pivot points for yourself to be able to go back and find other logging. I think it's very important to mention as well that you guys go through and as you're mapping out the attack, time frames and timestamps are key and important for that, because that then gets put on the board, if you will, that if you've seen an RDP connection at 02 in the morning, okay, hey, 02 is the time frame we're looking for. If we go to this next machine, let's look for 02 time frame as to what happened there. So yeah, that's definitely so when it comes to lateral movement and even persistence and some of the tooling nowadays, Alex, what are you seeing? What are some of the things that you're seeing leveraged out there? Because I know some of the things that we've seen leveraged, and I've always made this statement that these threat actors, these ransomware groups, they're using our tools against us. But what are some of the things that you guys are seeing?
The most recent one, we actually saw PS exec being used.
Okay, so PS exec, Josh, Anthony, Jeremy, you guys, what are some of the other tooling that you guys have seen with some of the incidents?
Mega IO.
So Mega, okay. So that goes back probably to this last one here, the encryption and then the data exfiltration. We always know as part of ransomware now. So Mega IO for uploads there. Anything else? Any other tooling, Anthony, Josh?
Sometimes we see like AnyDesk installed for remote access.
Yeah,
that's another one.
Yeah, so AnyDesk and things of those natures. Those, I don't want to call them kiddie tools, if you will, but those freeware tools that are out there that make life a little easier, right, for remote access. We're definitely seeing those leveraged. Anthony, you mentioned AnyDesk out there, a simple executable, but it allows file uploads, allows remote access. We're seeing AnyDesk leveraged as part of the persistence that just gets them back in the environment. So,
I mean, really,
especially if they're installed without any type of password protection to them.
Okay. Yeah. Jeremy, what was that?
I said, really, it could be any kind of tool that's useful for IT. I mean, in the last one we saw, I believe it was Firefox was just installed on a bunch of machines. Just because usually servers don't have anything, maybe Internet Explorer on it.
Yeah, apparently the threat actor wasn't real keen on using IE, so they put their browser of choice on there.
Well, at least we know they're in IT. No.
Yeah, there you go. But yeah, you're exactly right. And going back to the PS exec, Josh, Anthony, I know that during our incident, the unfortunate time there, that PS exec was definitely leveraged. It was leveraged in a number of different ways, because I think they actually pushed the payload with PS exec because we've seen that they pushed a test file prior to validate that they did have access to copy files to the machines. So there was a test file that went out. Then the payload file was sent out with PS exec, and then they used PS exec to execute the payload. But I know that in some incident responses as well, this one was pretty interesting. We've done this one, but we've seen group policies being created in environments. I mean, they truly made themselves an IT administrator, creating a group policy to deploy their payload so that when users logged in, it pulled it down, it installed it. And again, it kind of kept that level of persistence. Even if they didn't have access to the environment, they were still going to get hit.
And that's one thing we're seeing. I mean, and it makes sense. They're not reinventing the wheel here. They're just using tools. They're using things that normal IT administrators are going to use to be able to do these nefarious things.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, if the tooling's already there, then why risk pulling in more stuff, setting off more bells and whistles, with, whether it be EDR or antiviruses that are deployed out there that may somehow, trip something and set off an alarm. Why do that when you could kind of lay low for a while? And, we're seeing threat actors move even more quickly now. I think we discussed that in one of our previous episodes that, the time frame has really went from being within the environments almost a month or more to now they're in there, a week or less, or even sometimes we've seen environments being encrypted, in a couple of hours. They were able to do crib escalation and gain everything they needed very, very quickly. So yeah, when we come in to these environments, and when we step through all these processes, we've talked about the lateral movement. We've talked about the inventory tooling and the things that we're looking for. Jeremy, what is some of the next steps that we're going to start talking with the customers on when it comes to remediation? Because honestly, if we look at the kill chain here, right, you'll see that, backups are probably going to be touched. They're going to be disabling security tooling. And then, unfortunately, they're going to encrypt for impact. After all that's done, what is some of the conversations that we're then going to spin up with the customer to try to help them figure out a path forward? So, what does that conversation look like?
Well, the main thing is, like you said, is backups. You need to make sure that the backups you do have clean, good backups.
Right. Yeah.
And
go ahead, Jeremy.
Possibly even setting up like a white network for stuff you don't have to, or so you can, if you have to rebuild, you want to put all this stuff in a clean environment and keep it segregated from what's still out there that's infected.
Yeah, I think that's an important thing there. You mentioned backups, and so let me touch on that just real quickly. But I want to get to that white network piece because Josh, I know that you were all in on that remediation efforts in the incident. But backups, there's a lot of unfortunate cases where backups are encrypted as well, or backups are deleted. I know in our case we've seen backups deleted, but it is so important to have those backups in an off-site location where individuals can, you can go back to another third-party company that maybe has kept a snapshot of that backup or something like that, but somewhere that really has no AD ties. Because again, if they're leveraging domain administrator accounts and credentials to provide them the admin access to do these things, you don't want your backup sitting on a system that has the same credential sets, if you will, and administrative privileges and rights to go in there and just encrypt those or delete those off. So definitely having those in an offsite location. But let's go to that white network quickly. Josh, what did that white network look like during the incident that you and I both lived through and with Anthony there? So what was some of the efforts there?
It may have been just a little bit of an overkill, but what we actually did was we readdressed the entire network. So that when things were coming clean, then you stood them up on the new network. Basically what that did for us was it erased any chance that, let's say the threat actor was still in there, or we may have missed a door that they were coming through. That would make any of their old scans irrelevant because that's scanning of the old IP address scheme. It just pretty much changes the landscape at that point.
Yeah, I definitely like how you put that. I mean, it's a new playing field. It definitely levels the playing field that way. It takes you back a few steps in the kill chain, if you will, right? Hey, now we're back to where they've got to at least perform reconnaissance and those things. But I think it's important for us to talk about as well. Before any of this happens, what's one of the very first things, Jeremy, that I know that I've heard you tell customers that, hey, you've got to have this before we do anything. And what does that look like moving forward?
You got to have clean backups. I mean,
right, but the backups. But once they're going through the remediation efforts, I know I've heard you in the past state, hey, yeah, you can go ahead and start remediation efforts, but you're going to have this one thing here, and we come into every environment and kind of immediately start that.
You're going to have to be monitoring, eyes on the environment.
Yeah, exactly. And that's where, Alex, you and the guys come in. I mean, with that eyes on and having that 365, 24/7 monitoring coverage for the customers, you guys are immediately watching traffic on the wire leveraging NIDs and things of that nature, firewall traffic, even domain admin accounts. And I know that you guys are looking through those logs as you're mapping out the attack, but you're looking for these same types of IOCs that are known from this particular threat actor to start kicking off again. Again, I would need for an organization to do all this remediation work and then go right back into the same situation. So
That goes back to those clean backups. The white network. If you don't, you can have as clean a network as you want, but if you start putting dirty machines on it, it's not going to do much good.
Yeah, exactly. And the threat actors, if they still continue to have access to the environment, they can watch all this happening in real time. And so that's why, again, kind of one of the first steps would be, quarantining that network off or segmenting that network off, ensuring that it's got different endpoint or ins and out points. Josh, I think they actually stood up a separate internet connection for that white network so that it wasn't coming through the same IP address space there as well. So again, could have been overkill, but I like it. Truly segmenting things off to start fresh. So.
Absolutely. Basically, what you want to do is you want to put anything that is suspicious in almost like a black hole. We know of one way in and there's no way out.
I like that. Yeah, definitely. I mean, and at that point, right, the spotty sense goes so high that you're exactly right. I mean, if it doesn't look right, doesn't feel right, and then get it off the network. And so let's start wrapping up a little bit here and talking a little bit about those remediation efforts and kind of what those look like. All right. Hey, we've done all these steps. We've got eyes on. We're monitoring. It's time to start moving back to. Let's talk about the time frame around that real quickly and what those look like. So, Josh, Anthony, you guys have been through it. What did that remediation effort look like as far as getting machines back up and business running again?
I know it was quite a process. Once we had the white network up, they would have to start re-imaging machines because there was no dirty. We didn't want any kind of even a chance of a dirty computer on that new network. Right. So we start re-imaging machines, and to be honest, that's the best part and pretty much the worst part because
this is the hard part. Yeah, because I'm with Anthony definitely on this. You don't clean ransomware.
Yeah.
You re-image.
Yeah.
Everything's got to be fresh. Everything's got to be clean before it touches that white network. Because like you said, you don't want to do all that work and then accidentally put something that's infected on the white network, because at that point, now that white network, I don't trust it.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Completely agree with that. I know that machines were pivoted off. They even went so far as even purchase new machines. And, working with cybersecurity insurance nowadays that we hope organizations are leveraging and using, they will help foot that bill to get business functioning as normal. But I think that's important as well. Let's touch on that as we close here. Business functioning as normal. That's like the ultimate goal. That's what organizations want to get to. How long did it take, Josh, Anthony, for business to truly be functioning to normal?
The size of the network we were in, you were looking at it, and this is my opinion, Anthony. You can back me up on this or correct me if I'm wrong. It was somewhere around like 3 months of work before it was almost you get back to your normal day-to-day IT functions.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
And I would agree. Yeah. And even afterwards, there's still small things even after that you got to deal with.
Yep. So Jeremy, I'm going to throw a curveball at you here, and this may be another episode that we'll bring this up and talk about. But I know that you and I have sat through, Alex, you as well, now that I think of it. We have sat through with some of our FedRAMP and DFARS customers, one of the things that I think helps in this entire process that we've been talking about, and that being the tabletop drills. Let's go back to the timing. How long have you heard when doing these incident responses for the customers on the other side, does it truly take them before they start getting back to some sense of normal business?
It really depends on the size of the company and really what was ransomed.
Right.
It can take multiple months.
Okay. Yeah. Alex, how about you?
The same.
About the same. So we're here in a period of months. I mean, it's a long period of time, right? But what's going back to the tabletop drill? Do you guys think that helps improve the remediation sets? I mean, we've actually just seen some of that tabletop stuff in practice over the last few days. Even here at InfusionPoints, I mean, even ourselves, we go through tabletop drills, right, and contingency planning and things of that nature. So, do you guys think that kind of stuff definitely, benefits in that and kind of helps people?
Yeah, definitely.
I think if nothing else, it helps you to get away from making that knee-jerk reaction.
Yeah.
If you've seen it played out in a safe environment like a tabletop, then your brain kind of has that to kick back to. This is where I need to go next. This is the next step. It makes it more of a process rather than the worst day of your life.
Right.
And I think those emotions will still be there, obviously, because there's nothing quite like knowing that someone has pretty much taken advantage of your entire network. But it does help you to know, okay, this is a crappy situation, but we know what we're doing right now. It does take a little of that sheer panic out.
Yeah. Yeah, Jimmy, what's your thoughts on that?
It's pretty much the same thing. I mean, it just boils down to muscle memory. Even if you are panicking, if you've trained for this, you're going to benefit from it.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that is why, from the federal government compliance, again, DFARS, FedRAMP customer sets that we have, that's why that is a requirement that you have that tabletop drill because, it's kind of cliche to say it, and we've all heard it, that it's not if, but when. I think now that they're actually pivoting that statement over to, it's going to happen type of thing. Like yes, it is a matter of when it's going to happen, but organizations can go ahead and put a stamp on it that, hey, we're going to be impacted some way, some shape, form, fashion, or another. So
it could just help mitigate it from the get-go. Like if you do these training exercises, you might realize, we've got a huge gap here. What can we do to fix this?
Yeah. I love that because a lot of times when we're working with these companies, unfortunately, we're going to find gaps. I would say, case in point, first gap is they don't realize that the network's down until Monday morning if it's something that kicked off over the weekend or something like that. Minutes become hours in these types of situations very, very quickly. And so, one of the very, very first initial gaps that we have there is something like Alex and his team there here in InfusionPoints, right? SOC monitoring services, eyes on glass, somebody that's watching the environment. How many times, guys, have we seen incidents where they had AV or they had EDR, it alarmed, but nobody took action on it? I mean, we consistently see that, and because people don't have eyes on it on the weekend when they're out at the lake, it's still an unfortunate incident. Yeah, you spent all this money to have all this product and all these solutions, but you had nobody to implement the product or nobody to implement the solution. So again, going back to services like we have here at InfusionPoints, being SOC 360, firewall management, our EDR management solutions, you're exactly right. It'll help fill those gaps. Well, guys, listen, we're much over time here, but that's all right. Love the conversation. As always, I want to thank our audience for joining us on this episode of Live from the SOC. Guys, we're going to continue to do this. I'm not sure how many episodes. I initially thought, hey, we might have 5 episodes of this, but I kind of like it. And I'm going to be honest with you, I don't know if we'll have Alex drinking full-leaded coffee by the end of 5 episodes. So until Alex goes to full-leaded coffee, we're going to continue to do this. Alex, what are you drinking today?
Water. We
have went backwards, fellas. We're failing. So to you guys and our audience that's joined us, we appreciate it. Thank you for joining us on this episode of Live from the SOC, and we'll see you on the next one.
See you guys.
Yes.